Can you tell us in a few words, maybe even as few as possible, what is the organization you started and what is your role in the organization?
The organization we started is called the High Atlas Foundation, and it was founded in 2000. Our first registration took place in the state of New Mexico, so we were first a U.S. organization, entirely always dedicated to Moroccan development. And through the years my role evolved. I headed its board of directors until 2010, and then I joined the operations team here in Marrakech, leading its programs and its administration as we implement projects here in Morocco. So I headed its board and now I lead its operations.
Wow. And you were there from the beginning?
Even before, because it begins as an idea, of course.
What are your personal thoughts of the definition social entrepreneur as opposed to social innovator, or perhaps just entrepreneur, innovator, or even startup? Do you think there's a difference? And which of the definitions do you feel more comfortable with from your own experience?
Well, a social entrepreneur implies innovation, but also development and seeing through its growth. We are an innovation, but we are also entrepreneurial in that it's continuous, it's an ongoing innovation, and it's ongoing management and implementation of that thought and approach. And so I would consider us in a sense both, but we seek the fulfillment of an idea, and that idea is people's driven development, that projects are determined by the beneficiaries, by the people. It could be agricultural, it could be education based, it could be health, it may be in building our capacities in different ways, managerially, technically. And so, but what is important in everything that we do is that it's design and control and the generation of the benefits, all of that is by and for the people. Now, innovations are beyond that in regards to how to achieve scale, or within specific project areas like in agriculture and in education. We have innovations within the project types and in regards to how we grow, broadly speaking, beyond sectors, but as an organization wanting to bring this to more and more communities across Morocco. And that's what makes us entrepreneurial. We are entrepreneurs in that we seek the fulfillment of multiple innovations.
Why did you decide to start a new organization? Were there no other organizations already doing similar work in the field? What is new about this organization different than others? And is this still the case today?
There are, I guess, different responses to that. One is that the initial inspiration came from the realization that there is vast unrealized potential, I assume in the world, but certainly in Morocco, and definitely in its rural places. In the early 90s, when I began as a Peace Corps volunteer, the level of infant mortality in remote rural places due to unclean drinking water was staggering, disturbing, and realizing too that solutions are so accessible. Simply containing the water, piping the water, reduces infant mortality dramatically, and so and it's so achievable. There are other ways that such modest level of inputs at such modest cost, there can be profound benefit. Agriculturally, distributing or planting, harvesting 100 fruit trees, almond, walnut, pomegranate, there's a range of organic ones that grow in Morocco, can really change the life of an average family size of 5 in our calculation. And so, and the cost of 100 trees is, well, if you plant them from seeds, it's really, you know, in dollars, and yet they can be transformative for a family. So that potential really made it impossible for me to simply walk away. And therefore, even though the organization began in 2000, my commitment to Morocco was solidified in 1995 after I completed my 2 years of service as a Peace Corps volunteer. And so even though I went on to graduate school and I did other things before 2000, I would not let go of that intention of creating an organization. Another part of this, and to base it entirely on participatory approaches. The other part of this is particularly under the reign of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, there has been a context created in Morocco that wants people's participation in development, that utilizes multiculturalism in a way that leads toward meeting human needs, that you know, pursues South-South unity, that wants women in development and greater levels of liberation. You know, and so there's all of these frameworks that allow for ultimately transformative change. And so when you couple this idea of people-driven development combined with the Moroccan context, which wants it and has given multiple frameworks for it to unfold, then the potential becomes far more vast. It becomes scalable. And so therefore, when you ask me what was behind its creation, well, behind its creation was the potential, and then what came was a national environment that allows for that potential to really become realizable. So then it becomes a matter of work and strategy and partnership and pursuit, rather than having to change laws. The laws are in our favor for sustainability in Morocco. So it's really about individual, you know, belief and pursuit, or an organizational's position on sustainability, working within a conducive environment.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, it's very hard to measure success in the third sector. Like in business, it's very easy. Money, how much came in, how much came out. And it's for different reasons. How do you measure success of a project? And more important, how do you measure if a certain project was successful enough to return the investment that was made? If we're talking about money, time, work, facilities. That's it.
When it comes to measurement and evaluating success of a project or initiative or a program or a workshop, there is and must be a range of criteria. And there has to be, well, first and foremost, a serious dedication to measuring all outcomes. And so, that is a staple, that is a centrality to what we do and what we need to do better. And I assume that's the case for every organization that is dedicated in the way that we are to social change. And so therefore, we need to measure outcomes on inner outcomes, attitudinal outcomes, confidence level outcomes, self-belief, self-discovery kind of outcomes, outcomes that help measure the extent that people have created their visions and have the will to pursue and implement them, and all the different criteria that can be so composed in that. We have to have a sense of the definition of their plan and their willingness to work for it, and the level of skills that have been built to enable them to achieve the change that they want. And then we certainly have to measure that implementation, that classroom being built, or that water system being constructed, or that tree being planted, or that water system being installed. And so all of those things need to be monitored and evaluated, and that data shared in order to improve upon those processes. So and we have someone dedicated entirely to monitoring and evaluating the impact of our women's empowerment program. We have someone dedicated to gathering information of a range of types of data points on understanding the impact of our fruit tree planting. So it takes resources, it takes time, it takes a lot of thought, and it also takes the people to be part of that monitoring system, not just contributing data, but actually seeking the data themselves and sharing that. Because when we're talking about fruit trees being planted in 24 provinces and approximately 2 million planted since 2014, there is just no way that our modest-sized organization is going to be able to gather data on each one of those trees unless the community and the farmer and the beneficiaries were part of that data gathering process. And so it's a shared responsibility. Ultimately, we are responsible for the programs and projects that we implement, but it's without which we cannot grow, we cannot know our past, we can't know our future, we can't build the partnerships we need, we can't strategize as well as we could. It's key to all other keys in a sense. So that's really how we view and dedicate ourselves to measuring our impact.
Okay, thank you. Strategically speaking, what is the role of partnerships in your organization? How do you decide who to partner with, and when is it for your interest? Who are your major partners? It could be the local beneficiaries, the state, other organizations that could be seen as competitors. Do you understand?
Yeah, our primary partner are the communities, the cooperatives, the associations, the local people, and their institutions. Institutions that they've created in order for them to fulfill their purposes and missions and visions in life. organizations that oftentimes we help them create and build their capacities in order that they effectively manage and grow their organizations. And when communities have identified a development path forward, project types, so too do we then draw in partnerships. If it's an agricultural project, we will reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture. Oftentimes, our dedication to a particular region or municipality or group of villages or neighborhoods is brought on by a partner wanting to make a difference in that particular locality. And so ultimately it is about the community, but sometimes it starts with an agency identifying that community to focus on, which we are happy to do. You know, partnerships are really equated on a principle level with sustainability, in that the more productive, equitable, contributing partners that we have, so too do we lend toward the long life or the sustainability of the project that we partner around. And so the more we connect organizations, individuals to that initiative, the better chance that that initiative will succeed. And so that's really our guiding premise. And the more connections we're able to build, the better. And we see ourselves as primarily that. We are builders of partnership agreements. We like to formalize them into statements that we sign together. Those partnership agreements are with government, with civil society, with businesses, with schools, with universities, with education centers, with youth centers, with women's cooperatives, different government agencies at different levels of society, national, municipal, provincial, regional, businesses that are Moroccan and international. And so they take really all forms and all tiers and are all essential in order to be successful at what we do.
Okay, thank you. I only have 4 more questions. I want to ask you, what is your social vision? How would you define success? And what are the major challenges in reaching this vision?
On some level, I'm grateful to be able to say this, that we seek the fulfillment of Morocco's vision, which probably explains why I'm here. I'm not sure I could dedicate myself to a place unless I felt that the wind was behind our back and that I believed in the direction that that nation has put forward for itself. The country wants to decentralize. It's codified in its constitution. There's a decentralization roadmap and charter. When you combine the roadmap and charter, it's progressive. That means that the nation wants to dedicate decision-making authority, including budgetary, to subnational levels. And when you're into people's participation in development, that's very important. To have that local ability to make determinations. The nation is about African unity and building those partnerships and bonds, and forging a stronger continental bloc, which I think is incredibly important in the context of globalization. The opportunities that to promote, protect uplift, liberate the status of women and girls, and there's important visions and opportunities in that regard. And so, and of course, people's participation being required in the municipal charter, meaning that every one of the 1,500 municipalities needs to create a development plan based on the will of the people. Now, on the one hand, we seek to fulfill these and other frameworks. Imagine this, multiculturalism, that the cultural and religious diversity of this country is intended not just to be acknowledged and celebrated, but that their solidarity is to lend toward achieving human development for the people. So multiculturalism that leads to sustainability of projects and initiatives to meet human needs. That's also progressive and thoughtful and creative. And so you have all of these frameworks for vast fulfillment of the people, and yet they are not being satisfactorily implemented. And in fact, it's concerning the level of change, especially when we consider this open space of possibility. So what we seek is the actualization, the implementation of Morocco's vision, but to actually that it be experienced by people, by the far greater numbers of people. It's not being done in a way that is acceptable. And there are serious and justifiable reasons of concern. So our contribution to the application of Morocco's vision is a models of projects that, if taken to scale, could make an important national difference. And we believe that we can contribute in a way that actually can affect the national course, but affect it in a way that Morocco wants, with Moroccan government and institutions and partners and resources and visions. So that is our way forward to help bring about the reality of Morocco's vision, and to do it, and to generate the financial mechanisms to achieve that, and generate the methodology and approaches to achieve that in real measurable terms that we can evaluate, as implied in your earlier question.
I once, in Israel there's many NGOs, and the rumor I heard once is that most NGOs pretty much die after 7 years, unless they learn how to keep growing, for different reasons. And how do you create a work, is your organization, I know it grew a lot since it started in 2000, to different fields and different projects. So how do you create a work culture in a growing organization, and what is the relationship between the different projects and between the different project and the management?
In Morocco, we also have the serious challenge of organizations being created that are not as effectual as they were intended to be. and including not just civil organizations, but I would even say municipal councils, locally elected leaders. I don't see them as necessarily as the bearer of the full responsibility of being not as effectual as needed. In order to create sustainable change, we need training. We could say people's participation in development, but what does that mean? How does that manifest? What is our role in that? What do we do when we create a meeting, and how do we create a meeting, and when is the meeting, and where is the meeting, and who is there, and how is it organized, and what methods do we use, and how do we organize that information, and what follows that, and what occurs there, and what's the role of food, and do we have tea? There's so many considerations that go into any people's project, or even before we get to the identification of our project. We need to be trained in that, and we need to be trained in a way where we experience it. So we learn how to do that by doing it. And so even though it is the law of the land that every new municipality needs to create a development plan based on people's participation, it's not being fulfilled. And it's not being fulfilled because people don't want to. It's not being fulfilled generally because people don't know how to. How do we create a development plan based on people's participation in a municipality of 10,000 people with 40 plus villages? How do we do that? And then what are the role of those local associations within that? We didn't wake up knowing all of these answers. And so it's not fair to necessarily expect NGOs that never had that opportunity to learn and build their capacities, and it's not fair to blame all of those municipalities for cutting and pasting their development plans because they don't know how to do the requirement, and they've never been exposed to it. So if we want to have effective NGOs, and if we want to have effective leaders in municipal councils, and if we want them to fulfill their charter and responsibilities, then they need to be taught how in a learning by doing pedagogical approach. And so as they learn how to do it, they do it, resulting in that municipal action plan. But it takes facilitators that know how to manage that. The outcome of that is not only the identification of projects. So as we experientially learn how to create an action plan or develop a municipal plan, we will know projects that people most want. But also in that process, we will also have a sense of potential managers. How are our responsibilities being distributed? What is the level of in-kind contribution in the form of labor? How many days of labor are the members of this community willing to give in order to build that basin? So when you ask me what is the relationship between ourselves and our managers, all of our managers came from this kind of process. Amina, our director of projects, was a trainee in an experiential learning workshop in Imegdel, which is in the Ijukak municipality in the High Atlas Mountains. Rashid, as a university student here and from the nearby province of Rahemda, a rural area, was a volunteer with us for a year, going to rural schools and providing environmental education and planting trees and assisting in other educational infrastructure, school infrastructural projects. And he learned all of that. And he became a fantastic manager. And so our managers grow from the very experience, and that should be not just from our case, but that should be in the cases of municipalities as they fulfill their duty in creating development plans driven by people's participation. That will enable them to identify the people that they need in order to actualize, in order to fulfill the plans that communities have created.
Much of the work the organization is doing is in rural areas, right? Why do the local population in these villages come to your activities? Do they have more options except what this organization is offering? Why do they come? Do you know?
Let me take a wild guess. No. Because the answer is important and actually emotional. It's emotional because we are there to find out what it is in their heart. What do they want in their lives? And when they're asked that question, many or even most of whom have never been asked that question, we need to even discuss what we mean by what is your vision and dream. What exactly are we asking? How do you see your future? Well, how do you see yourself in a year from now? We have to really ask the question in multiple ways, and so that we even have a shared understanding of what we're talking about. That's how infrequent being with and hearing from the people, how infrequent it is. And when over days and over many meetings and over time, the future that they see for themselves becomes specific and clear, and that we work together to make it real and in fact measurable, then that is emotional and builds trust and goodwill, and also why governments and those who provide development assistance around the world need to entirely pursue this approach, because not only will it lend toward successful development, which is what we all want, but it will also redefine our relationships. We will begin to view government agencies differently if they were dedicated to this approach. We will begin to see our international relationships differently if that is the form of development that countries encourage worldwide. We will begin to see our local NGOs differently if they are trained in this approach and are so dedicated, and we'll begin to see our political leaders differently if not only do they pursue this approach once they are elected, but they pursue this approach as part of their very electoral campaign. That campaigns for elected office ought to be community meetings where people identify what they want, and that becomes the platform upon which a candidacy is based. And if our politicians were to do that, and our civil society were to do that, and social and corporations, all of whom need to be dedicated to social responsibility, if their social responsibility were to take this form, then we would have a level of a new form of partnership and a new form of of really social life. I don't want to at all minimize what this takes, even for a single initiative, a single project, for a single tree to be planted in this kind of approach. It's very difficult, but completely achievable. And I say that because no one can deny our experience over nearly 20 years. And no one can deny the literally thousands of beneficiaries that have seen this come about in their lives. But we don't exist in that. We exist in how do we bring this to greater and greater numbers and levels of people. Because if you were to measure every single impact that we've ever done, I'm not sure it's significant for the people, but it's not going to tilt the balance of peace and harmony. I shouldn't say that. None of us know the implications of our lives and what we do. But we are not satisfied. And neither is Morocco, and there are significant challenges that are actually that could be destabilizing and of major concern. And that is because development of the form we're talking about, which is Moroccan development, is falling too short for too many, for too long, and needlessly. So, with all the potential and good of what I said, it's entirely inadequate.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
But inshallah, your vision will go to everybody. My question is, it's very fashionable nowadays to encourage organizations to create social businesses. Do you think that in any of your projects, that any of your projects could become a social business, like the women cooperatives? Is this a social business? Does it, once they are established, are they still a part of this organization?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why they're fashionable, and that's because they're essential. If every proposal we ever submitted for development assistance were funded, we still couldn't achieve scale. There isn't enough grant money for transformative social change for Morocco to achieve its vision. Even with, and so there has to be an accompanying enterprise fully consistent with the Human Development Mission, but that generates the revenue needed in order to fulfill the mission. Now, in our case, the organization planted approximately 2 million trees since 2014. Those trees can be monitored for carbon credits, and those credits can be registered, certified, and commercialized and generate revenue in order for them to allow for reinvestment. That reinvestment will go in the form of new nurseries, which generates more trees to be planted, more offsets of carbon, more potentially certifiable credits, and more sales, and therefore more reinvestment. It's a compounding source that will allow us to benefit more and more people. We need that. And every organization needs such a part of what they do to allow them to grow according to their potential. And cooperatives need it, nonprofits need it. Obviously, businesses are there for this very purpose of revenue generation. But again, it's the without which we cannot achieve, not only our own organizational vision for itself, but Morocco will not be able to see its brightest day. We all need to think in terms of not just how we will serve, but how will we create the financial mechanism to allow us to serve, to enable us to serve more and more. And unless there's that financial component, then it's hard to see transformation or a truly, truly brighter day.
Wow. Okay. So my last question is, how do you... Well, you answered this actually. I will ask it anyway.
Go ahead.
How do you refer to the local population you work with? In my class, because it's a very neoliberal class, they suggest customers. You said partners before. Some say beneficiaries.
I would say friends, brothers, sisters, kabila, community, bilalbiya. Khwana, khwatatna. Sahabna, Benedum. Nesdil bled.
People of the country.
People of the region. Chili cane. That's how we refer to them.
Okay.
Not customers. I think we're the customer.
Okay.
We are they. Well, no, that means they serve us. But well, customer in the sense that we serve them. We're here to serve. So I guess we serve customers. But customer implies transactional, and there's really not a transactional relationship. There's expectations, maybe transactional in the terms of in regards to what we hope from each other. Transactional in the sense of communication and information and responsibility. But there's the element of customer that doesn't apply is there's a monetary dimension to customer. I can't imagine a business customer relationship where that business would want to let go. And so we don't mind letting go. We seek to let go. Our relationship evolves to the point where we become less essential. And so so the term would not apply in very critical ways. But it does apply in others.
Yeah, I'll just maybe explain, but it's I think we finished. I feel that there's a lot of we call it criticism on the way many development organizations approach the beneficiaries as people who need to be saved, as miserable people, as poor people, and I think from what I understand in the neoliberal approach, customers are being seen as people who have a choice to buy, as people who have, as people. Like, I think this is the humanizing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think of this in terms of. First of all, dear God, please save me. So the idea of being saved is so universal. We all need, oh Lord, have mercy on all of us, please. But I understand your point. I really just see this as a movement to achieve potential. And I'm not sure, now, but to direct our energy and efforts to those who need it most now, today. And so most of those who experience poverty in Morocco are in rural places. There are identifiable reasons of what creates this systemic, generational difficulty in life that we can address and change, and we believe we are in our own way, and that we seek to just do more of. But it's really about creating movements that combine, that federate, and that grow to higher tiers and horizontally. So, but it's not about, there isn't an us and them. I don't think that motivates us or that comes up into our mind. It's really about solidarity, shared struggle, shared purpose, and unifying toward a local and national and international, but local and national fulfillment. The international will take care of itself. And that's also, I don't want to minimize that, in that, what if Morocco succeeds at decentralization and women's liberation and people's participation? What if its model becomes satisfactory? What will that inspire in the Middle East, in Africa, and elsewhere? And so if we do right in Morocco, its inspiration will take care, inspiration for others will take care of itself.
Okay. Thank you very much.